No, I'm
and
kidding.
just doing janitorial
I'm kidding
work,
for Fernando.
But they're gonna have what do you say? What'd you say?
I said, you got a wide lens?
Hey, we need a wide lens for the big boy. Hey, but
different type of scouting equipment, you know, extra coaches. Plus, we were generating money to give scholarship. So, yeah, I don't think enough is said about that. Now, I believe there's some coaches that don't even get involved in any of that.
Yeah.
Okay, say, you know what, but I think if you want the extras, you want the things that are going to make your program better, you know, then you need to.
Yeah, and I think that was always one of the things that impressed me was, coming from Ursuline, and then seeing who was it, Fred. They cooked. They brought the food truck every.
Fred Royer.
Yes,
Fred Royer.
they every day during doubles, kids come up, they get their lunch, go in, eat. That. I mean, that's a huge deal.
Yeah. No, he gave us a great price, but it cost. Every club president that when I took over, I mean, they worked hand in hand. I mean, I from Pat Murphy to Ray Jaminet and all the people in between. You know, the Gridiron Club. You know, they started the golf outing in my father's name that raised a lot of money and created scholarships and provided things for the program, as well as coaches. So yeah, they we work shoulder to shoulder. I'm just saying that I think today the coach is kind of removed from that. I mean, I don't know how much they're asking the coach to involve himself in and you would know better than I do, but those are just my thoughts talking to some guys that are still coaching today.
Yeah, and I mean, I know, like, inside of a handful of programs, I think it may be unique to each individual setup and what the needs are, and the other thing is, as we're sitting here talking about it, your demeanor, the demeanor of the program, the overall, concept of the program was blue collar, put in the work, no flash, not bringing attention to yourself. And I think whatever that personality of the coach is probably falls, the team or the program takes that on. For example, like nowadays, if a coach is a little bit flashy, they're probably going to be pretty marketable and have picture days and photo sessions and, social media accounts presenting kids. So, it's probably, you got the nuts and bolts of things that you got to know. Are you good at your job? Can you motivate people? And then your flavor starts to flare into it a little bit. One question I do have on this Fitch game. Hartman leaves. Jack Kenny comes in.
Yeah.
And this is tongue in cheek, but not. Were you happy to see Hartman gone? not like you didn't like him, but he was pretty good.
Yeah, he was, and what they did was so consistently good on both sides of the ball, and I have the utmost respect for Dave Hartman. Was I happy to see him leave? Sure, absolutely, because I knew the type of coach he was, the type of guy he was, and what a job he did there, and there was obviously carryover. No disrespect to Jack, but there was carryover from Dave with that team, and I believe and we lost maybe by a field goal the following year to Fitch, but in both cases the kicker was the the kid that I played at Chaney with, the linebacker, Jim Calcagney, was his son.
Oh, okay. Well, see, I know. So this is interesting because that would be a common opponent. We played Fitch mid-year at Ursuline, and that was they had Stanek, they had Cato, big tackle, Cormel. I forget who the quarterback was, but I do remember him. But the dynamic started to change a little bit, and especially going into that, which would have been my senior year '95 season. I don't know, the edge of what Fitch seemed to be a couple years previously, it changed a little. It says Clinkscale scores on a 7-yard touchdown with 8 minutes in the first half. So I do think you guys go up initially. But it doesn't really give a lot of details about it. Talks.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, we score, they score at the end of the game, kick the extra point to win it.
Okay. So you're 0-1. It says this week, the next week in the book, week 2 is Camel. Do you remember being like that? Because you mentioned it. Boardman might have been week 2. I don't know.
Yeah, it probably was Camel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Camel.
Boardman week 3. Maybe.
Yep, 20-0 win. Camel has 19 yards in the first half. This is obviously, we've talked a little bit about the struggles of the offense in week 1, but only giving up 7 points in the first. They had the same struggles. They just made one extra play.
Right.
So the defense once again is looking extremely stout. 19 yards in the second half. John Cook goes 147 yards on 21 carries, 2 TDs, 9-yard run, and an 83-yard run. John Cook had that speed against Camel.
Well,
Vindicator says it. It's a quote.
Gene might have embellished a little bit there.
Chauncey Cook, it says Chauncey Cook has a pick 6 for the third score. So the defense is not only playing really well of stopping teams, but putting points on the board. And Camel ends up 58 rushing yards and 64 passing yards total in the game.
Yeah, and 3 guys that I didn't mention, Chauncey being one of them, Leroy Arrington, and Terrell Jones. I mean, 3 all-city players for us that were a big part of that defense. And again, we scored 20 points, actually 14, one defensive score, but not where we needed to be. I mean, making some strides, but I think we were pretty one-dimensional. Warga was thought of as a runner more than a thrower.
Mm-hmm.
And he evolved as the year went on as being both. But again, week 2, although we made some progress, we weren't where we needed to be offensively.
I recall that East loss in '97. Coming home, and you and your sister were sitting at the table with you guys, and because we hadn't lost a city game in 7 years, so his entire tenure with us was predicated on winning every time you lined up against a city opponent.
Not just winning, but dominating. Like, it not even being a game, really. And I shouldn't say. I mean, I'm sure there, if you were to go through every year that I was involved as a kid, I'm sure there were a couple games that were maybe a little closer.
Sure.
But for the most part, you just kind of, you looked at those. Certainly, I don't think you guys did. But as a kid, you looked at it and said, okay, well, that's when we're going to win, that you feel good about. And then to lose and then be pretty good, almost kind of like two, A's going at each other. Yeah, it was very much kind of a, whoa, I didn't think this was even possible. I remember that. I distinctly remember the Canfield loss in '96. Yeah. I remember getting on the bus, and the reason I remember it, they're good friends of ours to this day, the Caputo family, and my friend Pat they used to live down the street from us. Were you involved at all when Pat was there? Maybe not.
I think he had moved. I know. Yeah. I've seen him at social events after.
He had super.
Braden, make a note.
Yeah. I remember, Pat, to this day, Pat's still a good friend of mine. I still text him. Obviously, we don't keep him. He lives in Michigan now. But anyways, I remember getting on the bus and, like, all the managers, we're all 9, 8-year-old kids. We're crying. I mean, kids are crying. They were obviously shocked that they were going to win. And I remember kind of like almost, as a kid getting on Pat, like, you're not crying, you don't care, like, we care. I remember that being a really big shock. Like, nobody expected that comment. So that was a tough one. You remember those, unfortunately, as much as you remember some of the really big wins, which I do remember too. I could go through and name games like the Walsh game and Anthony Floyd making me put my head on a scale because he wanted to see how much it weighed after that game.
Why?
He had this thing that I have a big head. He used to tell me all the time, Coach, your son's got a big head. And so...
because he said he felt the same way about me.
Yeah.
I mean, and he wasn't talking about ego. He was
meaning
physical big
size.
head. Yeah, yes, like
physically
like
big
the
head.
volume of your skull and your head is.
Well, you know
big.
what?
And that picture, by the way, this is that picture. This is one of the.
That's from that game, yeah.
From the Walsh game,
Yeah.
and
we'll scan that, put that up. We'll take a picture of that, put that up. So I'll come back to that. So that's one of the big memories.
Oh,
is
for sure.
Is that Walsh game, that 96, the tough loss.
Yeah.
Now, was that, side note, was that an upset in your mind, Ron? Well, you never looked at any game as 100% winnable or losable, but I mean, for the average observer, who was the favorite?
Yeah, well, we knew they had a real big fullback, and they had a scat back that was really good, and they were really good. They had, they were a perennial power.
Yeah.
And they were expected to make a run at the state championship. We thought, but beating the number one team in the state in Minerva in the opener, and then beating East and getting redemption, going in, we were playing our best football.
Mm-hmm.
We were, and to be honest, we thought we had enough talent that we could certainly play with them, and the weather, was a factor.
It was cold. I remember, kind of cold. It was raining.
Yeah,
too.
it was rainy and cold. Yeah, absolutely. And our kids just played lights out. I mean, they really did, and especially defensively. Antoine and Anthony came up with the big play, and Ollie had a big catch.
So Walsh, were they the AP state champs, or was it Minerva?
Minerva.
Okay.
I
They were
don't.
number one in the state.
They were ranked number one in the state, so
Yeah.
I'm guessing they were AP champs. Yeah.
Okay, or maybe in that region, whatever. So they're number one. Walsh, I think the difference that you guys had against everybody in there is you could throw the football at that point in time.
Right. Yeah, especially you go back to the Minerva game, and we played them at Salem, and it was rainy
Muddy.
and muddy, and we threw the ball like it was 80 and sunny. I mean, and that's a tribute to Antoine Floyd, who was our quarterback. He had a big game, and he had a big game against East as well.
So, and that was one of the things I wanted to ask you. I think you kind of have a unique perspective on, you were part of that transition.
the struggle, building the foundation, right? As Ron says, the foundation of toughness was laid, and the program. A lot of those guys got to see the success just kind of by watching, whereas you experienced the difficulties as a player, and then you, I mean, really the turnaround, the flip as a coach. To be able to coach and be part of that is special, but then also to, like Ron and some of the other guys, to feel how the desperation of wanting it, and then boom, you're here. How did that feel?
Yeah, that was well. One thing, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I didn't go through that. I think both as a player and as a coach, to see that transition, that process unfold right in front of my eyes, and what it took to be successful on a daily basis was something that was really gratifying. And you know, even my first year coaching, we was 89, 90, and we were still trying to get over that speed bump, and we just kept working. And then, you know, we got some good kids, and they played hard, and we just got it rolling. And you know, but we never cut any corners. We tried to outwork everybody. You know, Coach always said that, you know, there might be smarter guys than us out there, but they're not going to outwork us on the weekend to get ready, and they're not going to out prepare us, and we're going to get our guys ready. And we took great pride in that, and that's why I think we were so unified too. I mean, no one. It was just us. Like, when we went to functions, we sat together. I don't know if that's good or bad, but we sat together. We would be at, you know, the corn feed every year, and everybody else is mingling, and it's just us. And it was just something that you just learned a lot of football, and you had a good mix of personalities, and knowing that helped me assemble my staff that you need. You know, you need a Pope, you need a Mick, you need a Steve Z, you need all these different personalities to mesh and to help kids reach their full potential. And
that's something I wondered. I was talking to Ron about this before. You know, how do you? I never coached with you, but just knowing how the dynamics of you know, the Chaney program and the expectations, and how do you navigate some of those 80s, 90s demands and program with today's kids? And I'm not talking about running 90, 40s, but you know, just the do it because they said do it.
yeah, that's tough to do. Yeah. I think it starts, you got to have a strong culture, and the kids got to understand your culture. I mean, you got to explain what it is, what it means to give great effort, what it means to be a brother, what it means to be a family, and you got to do things. Coach always said you got to do things off the field together. So you got to really get to invest in each other as human, as friends first, and then you cultivate your culture every single day. You got to talk about it, and you got to be, you know, teach them these key words of, you know, what is great effort, what is perseverance, what is, you know, loyalty, what is all those things, and you just teach it, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And but what I have used is just a strong culture, and a brotherhood, and doing those things off the field, because if you do, in you know, having, like, coach, the pillars, you know, family and faith, and community, and school, and then program, having that, you know, knowing that if you take care of the top three, you know, winning's going to be a byproduct of all those other things. I strongly believe that if you take care of the community, the faith, your loyalty, all those stuff, then you're going to have a good program, and you're going to be successful.
And so, Ron, like, what are you thinking? Like, you know, you're, as a head coach, man, you're always in the thick of it, like right in the moment. You're dealing with what's 6 inches in front of your face, but then you also feel like, you know, I think I got some guys coming. You know, there's some troops coming over the hill. How do you weather that storm? Know you have a youth movement coming, but also not feel like you're sacrificing some of the guys who've been in your program for 4 years. How do you manage all that?
Well, you know, to be honest with you, that what was utmost on my mind with all that at that time, I can recall, is I had lost a kid to baseball, basketball. And I mean, came to my house. I was living on Christine Lane. It came to my house with his equipment during doubles and said, you know, great kid. I mean, tremendously successful, and just backed off, you know, and so you.
Yeah, and it seems like just at that point, you know, that 90 to 91 to 92, 93, that's where the program kind of is kicking in, because you are replacing guys. Like, you know, you get some juniors stepping up, seniors leaving, and you're, you know, the old cliche, I would just reload, not necessarily rebuilding. But that's where it all kind of seems to start clicking, is in that era, you know, that you're talking about.
It really did piece. It pieced from 87, and like we've talked about, every year got better. Even though we were 1-9 in '89,
Right, 100%.
we were playing a lot better football.
Yeah.
And the kids were progressing, and you know, 90 was a really pivotal year. I mean, just to taste that winning success, to have those wins, more wins than, or what was 5 and 5?
Yeah, 5 and 5.
Just to have a winning season and be city champions, that was a big deal. And you know, the kids that were maybe wondering turned into believers, and that just kind of caught fire.
Yeah, and I think that's the toughest thing as a coach is you know, you preach this, right? You preach it, and you stick to it, and you stick to it almost to the point of what's perceived as cutting your own legs off. And at some point, you got to get paid for all that. You know, where, okay, 2-8, you know, 1-9, 2-8, shoot, 1-9 again. At some point, there's got to be a payoff to the kids. Like, now you know, and then you.
Well, you talk, and I heard you guys talk a lot about, you know, you have to learn to win.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and how do you get to that point?
Yeah.
You know, and really, you know, from the outside, you know, you talk about the 87, 88, you know, that 88 year, it was like one of those years that the schedule was brutal. They played a brutal schedule. And it was like, oh, we almost won. We almost won. You know, we almost beat a really good Steubenville team, you know. But then you saw something like South was really good that year. They had Morrow at quarterback. They had Tamron Smith. And I'll never forget going down the South, playing them at their place, and played a great game. 2 long Del Baccio runs and end up upsetting them. You know, so then you're like, you know, we're not that bad. We're pretty good. We, you know, learning how to win. And I think then you saw it the next year, you know, as you started to grind it out, then winning a city championship. You know, we were always like, we want to win that city title. You know, that was a big deal. Like, teams were really good in the city. I mean, there was a lot of great athletes, you know. It's funny, even talking to my kids about it, they don't realize there was 5 high schools, you know, and big high schools. We were either D1, D2, you know, it wasn't small schools.
It's just kind of pretty neat. And like, I did not, it's also neat to see what road people go down, like a non-traditional route.
Right.
Like doing, I didn't know you were artistic in whatever form it is, you know, watching you shoot him and have different things lined up. And was that something you were always into, or did it just?
Kind of, sort of. So I used to draw when I was coming up. I recently sort of showed my daughters some of my old drawings, and they laughed at them. I used to think they were really good, but they actually weren't that good. But yes, I've always had an artistic side, but I've always been like math oriented as well. And so that leads me into my my actual profession, which is data. I'm in data analytics at the moment, but the creative side, and that's sort of what makes, I believe, my platform more engaging. 'Cause I use data, I use photos, I use graphic design, all of that different stuff to make a more engaging sports experience. So it's just like now, like that I'm not chasing corporate promotions and things of that nature, and can kind of take some time to just embrace all the different parts of me, be it, you know, my past as a teenager and the seeds that were planted in me in that time, my natural skills and interests and things of that nature, just bring it all together under one umbrella. And that's actually what you see now in Sky High Sports. So always been a sports fanatic, love data, love creativity, and it all manifests in the platform now. Short. I love history as well. And this is more of a newfound thing. But just seeing the Chaney program over the last couple of years, the success that they have, some of the challenges that they've had, coming back into contact with you and Coach Berdis, I feel like there needs to be a gap bridged between those two eras. This is a new era of Chaney football. You know, as much as, you know, the red and gray is still there. Like it's a new era. It's a different era of the game. But I think the young folks can benefit from knowing the history and the traditions of the program. Not that they have to take them all on and recreate that, but just to know, you know. So like, I didn't know that like I said, I was there and I didn't know. I was a kid. I wasn't paying it that much attention, but just the thread that Coach Berdis has through the history, like from the beginning to now, that's beneficial to know in terms of thinking about just like a grounding of like, what is it that I'm actually doing? Like we can say, oh yeah, I love the game of football. So I'm out here just playing football, getting my stats. I want to go to college. But just knowing that it's deeper than the game. And so with the article, I hope to, you know, try to bridge a gap between the generations, inspire them to look in the past and the foundation and the traditions that they're actually standing on, and take that thing further. And
The other thing I was thinking about, and refresh my memory, because I remember being in there so often and looking, but I can't remember vividly. There were also the all-city pictures.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
every year in football and basketball.
So not only is it just that Chaney piece, but the city piece. South is, I think South seems to have a fairly decent alumni association where they have like an all-class reunion, so they're still South. I'm not sure about East, but
East has a big time one.
Okay, so East, but all those things that we're talking about specifically with Chaney, and that's the reason for this podcast, right? Is you know, once those things are gone and people don't take the time to ask questions now and explore things now, once all that knowledge is gone, it's never coming back. And so I think that there's value in a lot of those City Series pictures too, where guys, great players, great men, got on to do great things. They don't have access to some of those pictures either.
Correct.
You know, so that would be a really cool thing to put together.
And think of how many guys that aren't in the Hall of Fame because it went down for all those years are about to go in the next number of years now that it's firing up again. And how many kids that are playing now are going to be in that Hall of Fame, you know? So that being a major part of it. And that's actually, Casey just sent me a photo the other day of he's having the 160 guys that are enshrined now, currently, put on a giant placard, permanent placard, where you can just keep adding plates to it.
Oh, okay.
That's nice.
Let me get this is Fernando. We can edit this. Hello?
Car
What's up?
broke down.
Oh my God, you're here.
No, that's if he makes it. Is he allowed to park in the drive?
If he makes it, is he allowed to park in the drive?
That's beautiful.
Well, we'll have Lamar down here and be like, this is kind of awkward. We didn't think you were coming, so we set somebody else up.
Oh, man.
Your sub's in.
Yeah, a little awkward. Oops.